Good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the introductory session of our Managing Digitization Projects module brought to you by the Digital Empowerment Project, a nationwide initiative organized by the 6 U.S. regional museum associations dedicated to providing free, self-paced training resources for small museums. This inaugural series of online trainings, focusing on digital media and technology topics, is made possible by funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. My name is Avery. I am the director of the Mid-Atlantic Association of Museums, and I am your host for today's program. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white female with brown, long, wavy hair, red glasses, and I am wearing a blue blouse with pink flowers. I'm located in my home office, and behind me is a white wall with 2 windows. A small bookcase also sits behind me, which houses museum-related texts and various knickknacks that change throughout the year. This topic was chosen because many museums and archives and cultural institutions have digital collections or have collections that they are thinking about hosting in a virtual space. This module focuses on tools, resources, best practices, and descriptive standards for building a robust digital collection program and structuring digital collection projects correctly, covering common decision points in digital project planning, project implementation, and long-term maintenance of digitized records. Attendees will learn to assess existing and potential digital collections, review recommended digitization tools and equipment, learn research methods for potential collections management systems, and be introduced to digital preservation practices. In this era of virtual meetings, when digital spaces may substitute for our physical sense of place, it is important to reflect on the land we each occupy and honor the Indigenous people who have called it home. I am speaking to you from my home office, which is located in Erie, Pennsylvania, the historical and ancestral homeland of the Erie people, which later became part of the Seneca Nation and the Greater Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Wherever each of us are located, let us acknowledge all Indigenous nations as living communities, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations. We, the Digital Empowerment Project, recognize that our organizations and those of our members were founded within a colonizing society, which perpetuated the exclusions and erasures of many Native peoples throughout the United States and beyond. We ask you to reflect on the place where you reside and work, and to respect the diversity of cultures and experiences that form the richness of our world and our profession. Before we begin today's presentation, a few housekeeping notes. I'd like to acknowledge today's American Sign Language ASL interpreter, who will be situated on the left hand of your screen. Captioning for today's program is embedded in a box just below the video player on our website with controls to adjust your experience. The best way to continuously refine our craft is to listen to our attendees. So we ask that you share your candid feedback with us. Following today's program, you will be sent a link to a satisfaction survey. Sharing your experience through the survey will only take a few minutes and will greatly improve our work. During today's program, we will address as many of your questions as time allows. However, sometimes we are unable to answer all of those questions, as others may arise when reflecting on the program. So, we have set up an online community forum for raising questions, posting answers, and connecting with your fellow museum practitioners. If you are looking for help in between programs, please visit the forum on the Museum Learning Hub website and click on Join in the upper right-hand corner to create an account and to post your questions. A member of the community or one of our student technology fellows will respond to you. Lastly, please follow us on social media to stay in touch and to be notified of future programs. Links to our social media channels will be posted in the chat area. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. Anne Stegina was most recently the Senior Collections Manager at the Anchorage Museum in Anchorage, Alaska. She started her museum career in 2009 and has worked as a Senior Collections Manager at the Intrepid Sea, Air and Space Museum and at the South Street Seaport Museum, both based in New York City. Carolyne Hart has served as Marketing and Membership Development Coordinator for the South Dakota Art Museum since 2017. She draws upon her experience finding creative ways to communicate and connect people and ideas in person and online. Her marketing and outreach focus is raising the museum's visibility in the art community and as a tourist destination and a favorable place for locals and South Dakota State University students and staff to connect with art and each other. Prior to joining the museum field, she spent 24 years with Hewlett-Packard, leading strategic marketing and business development projects throughout Asia, Europe, and the United States, and 5 years as Director of Social Media and Digital Marketing for IBEC Ventures. Taylor McKeown is a curator interested in the rich art history of the Northern Great Plains. As coordinator of collections at the South Dakota Art Museum, Taylor focuses on curating, preserving, and providing access to the museum's permanent collection. Please join me in welcoming today's presenters, and let's begin. Presenters, I give it to you to take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stegina. Thank you, Avery, for that lovely introduction. I'm so delighted to be here speaking with all of you today. So let's get started. Oops. There we go. So as Avery mentioned, my name is Stegina. My pronouns are she, her. I recently moved up to Anchorage about 2 years ago to work at the Anchorage Museum. And it's funny how life moves kind of fast. When I was reached out to speak with you all, I was working there, but I've recently taken a new job with the health department up here. So still in Anchorage, but taking a little break from museums. But I'm delighted to tell you about all the wonderful things happening at the Anchorage Museum. And yeah, my background is mostly collections management in historic structures or historic ships. As you could probably tell from the Seaport Museum in New York there. So yeah. And today we're going to be talking about the digital platforms that are at the Anchorage Museum, as well as a photography project I worked on during the pandemic. I think there might be a common theme of a lot of the projects that we worked on during the pandemic, but that's all we've been doing the past year, right? So I live and work on the unceded territory of the Dena'ina people in South Central Alaska. I provided this map. It's very old, but Alaska hasn't changed that much. You can see Anchorage is there in South Central Alaska. I think it's always helpful. Alaska is a gigantic state, and so it's helpful to kind of orient yourself geographically, I think, when you're talking about things. So I still have friends who think I live in Fairbanks or Juneau, or they don't quite know where Anchorage is, which is totally fair. It's very far away from the northeast of the United States. So this is the Anchorage Museum itself. It's the front entrance to the museum. There's around 60 to 70 employees, depending on the season, which is relatively medium-sized staff, maybe, depending on where you are, small staff. The collections department consists of around 7 or 8 folks. I was very impressed by the size of the collections department when I came there. And it's multidisciplinary museum. So it has natural history collections, ethnographic collections, historical objects, lots of 2D materials, and I'm going to go on to the next slide because they're all spelled out there. So natural history, like large objects like furniture, kayaks, and a lot of contemporary art. And then, the collections department split into 2 sides, art and objects, which I worked on, and library and archives, which I worked on a little bit, but with less. And so the library and archives house about 800,000 photographs, slides, images of any kind you can think of, daguerreotypes, cyanotypes, as well as paper, archival material, maps, books, and as well as the institutional history of Alaska. And the focus of the museum, I'm sorry, I didn't mention this earlier, is it extends outside Anchorage in Alaska to the wider circumpolar north. There's a lot of commonality between people who live in northern environments and the tools they created and the ways they survived, and then sometimes also the discrimination and prejudice that they faced. And so the museum tries to create a community of all of those areas that in the north. So Scandinavia, northern Russia, northern Japan, etc. So, and so I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about the online platforms that the Anchorage Museum has. It was so exciting to walk in and have all of these digital platforms ready. At my previous position at the Intrepid, I worked really hard to get their collection online, and it is now. You should check it out. But it was really exciting to come into a situation where there are already online platforms, because I know how difficult that is, and if you're struggling with it, it's going to be okay. So on the art and object side, there is a proprietary database, and I'll just I did screenshots in to hopefully help everyone with bandwidth. But you can see here the art and object side uses TMS. So a lot of these categories are pulled from TMS. The artists are the constituents, categories are classifications, culture is pulled from the culture field. But it's a little bit bare bones. As I was leaving, they were working to improve it with kind of a landing page FAQ to help folks who might not be professional researchers, might not know all the terms that we know as collections people. And when we started at the beginning of the pandemic, there were about 12,000 of the 24,000 objects in the online platform, which is pretty good. But the pandemic definitely gave us a chance to clean data, which I'll be going into in a little bit later, and get more objects online. So that was pretty exciting. But it was nice that there was already this setup when I got there. And on the library and archive side, the Anchorage Museum is part of a consortium of libraries. So as you hopefully can see here, this is the library landing page, and you can see the Anchorage Museum, Anchorage libraries, municipal libraries, libraries in Fairbanks, Juneau. So all throughout the state, the museum is part of this online group, which makes it really great for our visitors and constituents to be able to search across all platforms to find all the different resources they need. And this is, again, Alaska Digital Archives. It's another platform. The Anchorage Museum has, I think, about 10,000 photographs up on here. And both the library system is managed, I think, by the city, so not by the museum. And the digital archives, I think, are managed by the University of Anchorage. But again, it's one-stop shopping kind of for visitors, or, at least a place to jump off of if you are researching a particular topic. It's a really great research to search across all these different things all across the state, because if you are traveling from one part of the state to the other, it's a pretty big investment in time and money. So resources like this help people as they start their research, so that they can kind of focus it better and use their time wisely. This is the new Anchorage Museum archive image search. It will be released soon. I know June was the release date, and so this is kind of sneak peek. But you can see here that it's a little bit more user-friendly, maybe a little bit more modern user interface-wise than some of the other, like the first object database I showed you. And so when I left, we were kind of talking about, do we want to move the object online side into the this platform that, again, was coded by a member of our staff who's amazing. We were very lucky to have him. And so this is the photo archive online that will be available soon. And if you kind of can see, I hope you can see, oh, you can see my mouse, great. Like, I know it's very small, but there's a clipboard there. If you click on that, it links the image to the finding aid, so you don't lose any context or anything like that. Has great search capability. And so we're really excited. But as you can see, the art and object size uses TMS. The photo archives and library don't really have an internal database yet. So we were trying to figure out, do we move everything into TMS? Do we keep, archives have their own specific formatting for cataloging and finding aids, so and EAD records and things like that. So do we use a different platform? So again, it's kind of started in the middle of a project and ended in the middle of a project. So I'm just kind of showing that little snapshot of, these are conversations that come up, and there's no easy answer. You kind of have to figure it out as you go, right? So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the photography project I worked on during the past 18 months. So when the pandemic started in March, our team was working on an inventory. So there were about three of us full-time and a part-time person working on the inventory. And I kind of noticed as I went through that not everything had a great image sometimes, or sometimes things didn't have images at all, which I feel like is a very universal experience. And so I kind of just created an object package in TMS and just kept a running list of like little things I could do quickly when we were allowed back on site. And because that was obviously one of the issues right during the pandemic. So our offsite project was cleaning up data for the online database. And when we were allowed to go in and staggered schedules, we kind of needed projects we could do ourselves. I hope you all can relate to that. So anyway, I hadn't done photography in probably about 5 years. I had been a collections tech, but I was out of it. So all of this I'm showing to you, I'm very much standing on the shoulders of my colleague, Becky Batchelor, who is now at the Met, I think. And she did a presentation for AAM a while ago about object photography on a budget, and has been a great resource to me during this. And so hopefully find her presentation. It's really great. But anyway, as you can see here, the Anchorage Museum had been able to buy some stuff in the past, like lights and tripods and copy stands with grant funding. So I was lucky to inherit all of these wonderful tools, but you don't really need them. Like, you can get by without them. So you can kind of see here my shoestring budget backdrop. I like to use paper because paper gets dirty, or wrinkled or folded or creased. You can just, you can recycle it. And so with the fabric backdrop, sometimes they get wrinkled. They retain dirt more. You have to wash them. So it's really easy to buy a piece of poster board. You have a nice blank background. It's like $1. So you can also see. Oops, sorry about that. I used foam core, white foam core a lot as a reflector because the light would just bounce off of it. And so that was really helpful. And my backdrop was a gray piece of paper taped to some foam core, had a string running over it. That was just my low key, because these tables were used quite often. So it needed to be pretty mobile. But again, that was my setup. It was a couple pieces of paper, some foam core, and some string. Here, I'll go through these images, and then the next slide, they might make more sense. These are all fake objects, by the way. This was for another project I was working on, so nothing here is real. I just thought it'd be funny. So here you can see in this first image, I had my setup, but the camera's a little high. The object isn't in the center of the field. So I figured maybe if I put a box underneath it, it would get to the center. And then here, when I properly positioned the camera, you can't tell how terrible my setup is. And so this is what it actually looked like. I had paper attached to magnets on a cabinet. It's all in a cart. And you can see here I had a little box underneath the paper. So again, like, I did have the nicer tripod, but you can just use yourself. It'll still work. And lastly, so that was for smaller objects, right? That could be on carts. This is for bigger things. Again, in this picture, I know I have the very fancy lights and the fancy copy stand, but overhead lights and yourself, as you can see my colleague here illustrating on a box, just taking a photo. You'll get this very similar image. And so, lay down some ethafoam and some tissue, have a plain backdrop on the ground. It's a very economical way to take nice photographs for your online database or just behind the scenes stuff. This is my last example, I think. It's a mistake I made, and I'm sharing it with you so that you can learn from it. Nowadays, I know people buy like tents, the nylon tents to take photographs of highly reflective things. So a trick I learned was if you take a piece of poster board or a piece of paper, cut a hole in it, stick the camera lens through. And you can kind of see in these, although I know that they're not great photos, you can see there's more reflected noise in this image than this one. It's a little clearer. Definitely get a white piece of poster board, because I forgot that gray absorbs light and will not be as reflective. So that was my mistake. Be aware of the colors. Black absorbs light, obviously. White reflects it. Gray, also is not very reflective. So that's why this photo is not very good and very dark. But hopefully we can all learn from me messing up. But again, you can see here, very mobile. Like, I'm on a work table. I have the copy stand with some string, but tacking it to a wall would have worked just as easily. And yeah, it's just you don't have. I don't know how expensive the little tents are. I think they might be a little more reasonable now. But if you can't have them, just 2 pieces of poster board and some cardboard will get you through. So yeah, takeaways are: make the best with what you have, and whatever you inherit, try and make the best of. I was very lucky to have things that they applied for grants for, and we got to keep. Trial and error, like with that little Stegosaurus photograph, like, it didn't work this way, so I kind of found other ways to make it work. And I think it's worth taking. I know we're all in a rush and everyone's overworked, especially now, but I think it's worth taking the time to try and make those mistakes so that you can develop a really good workflow instead of stumbling along kind of as you go. Take the time to really figure out how you want to do a project and do it properly. And lastly, you can do it. It's going to be okay, everybody. I want to say thank you to the Museum Learning Hub and IMLS for having me speak today. You're very welcome to follow me on social media or email me if you have any questions. My Instagram handle is Steginosaurus, but I'm not like a cool museum influencer there. Alaska is very beautiful, and I feel guilty that I get to experience it, and a lot of my family and friends don't. So if you would like to take a break and look at some mountains, you're very welcome to follow me, but I probably won't have a lot of museum information. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending, and thank you to all at the Museum Learning Hub for inviting Carolyne, Hart, and I to speak with you today. And I have to say thanks to Anne, because some of your tips I was like taking notes on, and I'm nerding out over these collections things. So my name is Taylor McKeown, and I am the collections curator at the South Dakota Art Museum. My pronouns are he, him. I am a white male with short wavy brown hair, and I'm wearing a blue and white plaid button-up shirt today, seated in my office in front of a row of filing cabinets.
And my name is Carolyne Hart, and I am Marketing and Membership Coordinator for the South Dakota Art Museum. I am a light-skinned, 62-year young white female with straight, short brown hair that's growing increasingly salt and pepper gray, but I think that gives me more of a distinguished look. I am wearing navy blue rimmed glasses that are often referred to as cat eye style. And today I'm wearing a black and white blouse that's patterned with wavy bubbles, accented by dangly pearl earrings. I'm in my office at the museum with posters and artwork and bookshelves behind, but no window, because as many of you probably also experience, our offices are in the basement.
So the South Dakota Art Museum is located in Brookings, South Dakota. We're way on the east side, far from the Black Hills, and we are the State Art Museum housed on the South Dakota State University campus. We have 5 full-time staff members, supported by part-time student workers, and a volunteer corps from our museum guild. Our mission statement reads, as stewards of the state's art treasures, the South Dakota Art Museum collects, preserves, exhibits, and interprets visual art to provide access and education, to foster appreciation of the visual arts for the people of South Dakota and its visitors. And our collection is comprised of about 7,000 visual art objects. Our cornerstone collections include the works of South Dakota-born illustrator Harvey Dunn, Yanktonai artist Oscar Howe, children's book illustrator Paul Goebel, contemporary and historical Native American collections, the Carolyne print collection, and the Margab linen collection. And digitization last year, pre-pandemic, seems like another world now, but the collection's digital presence before the pandemic was really pretty scant. You can see an example on this slide of a collections web page on the right there, which just included basic biographical information and really no images. Although we've been working for many years with the intent that we wanted to share the collection online, securing copyright permissions and good images and inputting clean data into our past perfect collection database. But we really hadn't made the leap as of last year. And some of that, developments in digitization are somewhat slow because we are a small staff size and some limitations with our website. And with that background, I'll turn it over to Carolyne.
So normally, and certainly pre-pandemic, the museum is a whir of activity with 12 to 15 exhibitions a year, lots of in-person events, and a museum store that's just wonderful and features original local and regional art, pottery, jewelry, books, beads, gifts. And so normally my focus is just keeping that marketing machine whirring with social media and website and newsletters and physical mailings around all of that activity. And then, oh, by the way, I'm also the membership coordinator, so that means keeping membership revenue flowing. But then, Friday the 13th, March 13th, 2020, when we were working and things were starting to bubble up with COVID, but the announcement came in the morning that the university's president announced that starting Saturday, we would be temporarily closed to the public. And so this post on social media went out around noon, announcing that we'd be closed for a while. But if people wanted to hurry in Friday afternoon, they'd be able to get a virtually private viewing of our 6 current exhibitions. A short while later, I encouraged people to come in and shop on Friday and stock up with their spring essentials, but of course, no toilet paper or cleaning products, which reflecting, I guess, at that point that already had become an issue. And then by the afternoon, as a staff, we concluded, well, our planned March events probably need to be just canceled at this point. So that announcement went out. And when we packed up at 5:30 on Friday afternoon with our laptops and a few office supplies, heading home for what we thought would be just a few weeks potentially of working from home, I got up Saturday morning and took this picture of my snow-covered bird feeder to let people know that that's what we'd be doing, and we would continue to do our best to bring the museum into their homes and give them some behind-the-scenes look. And as always, our South Dakota kind of folksy, low-key, but quality style coming into their home situations. So Monday morning, that meant a post featuring one of the artworks from the Harvey Dunn exhibit that was hanging at the time. And again, trying to be lighthearted and upbeat. I checked yesterday, and it turns out the baby boom that was predicted really didn't materialize. Although there's predictions there could be an uptick this summer and spring, or summer and fall. So maybe an opportunity lost, but the opportunity that came our way was thanks to the Dynamo director of our local arts council, Ashley Ragsdale, who very quickly pulled together a daily art challenge with prompts for art themes that people could work on at home and then share through social media. And so as a team, we put our heads together and noticed that there were some themes that we could maybe tap into with works from our collections and the current exhibits that were on display. So things like the Badlands, the Campanile, family photo, Buffalo. Again, there were lots of topics there that piqued our interest.
So yeah, my role in that art challenge had been to review all those prompts and see if there was anything in the collection that I knew we could share if we had copyright permissions, or if we had maybe an artist bio available that we could easily share. So I pulled a list together for Carolyne based on those prompts. And for instance, one prompt was a family photo. And I knew that we had a terrific photograph from one of our photography collections, and a bio that our exhibits curator, Jody Lundgren, had previously written for a show. So I just pulled those together and shared them with Carolyne so she could kind of translate them to social media posts.
Yeah, and so that really started with then building out the website with content as well, for our collections area of our website. And as Taylor mentioned, we're located on the South Dakota State University campus, and we use their web platform, which is based on Drupal. It's really quite vanilla and doesn't give us quite the look and feel of many art museum web pages, but it enabled us to start at least sharing content and images from the materials that Taylor had access to. So slowly but surely, we started using what we had access to and building out this web content, which could then be turned into regular social posts that shared that on a smaller scale and linked back to the website for the more in-depth view. It gave me content for our newsletter, which again reaches often a different audience than than the folks that are connected to us through social media. And so over the course of that month, we were able to tap into these art challenge topics and hashtag them in a way that really helped us reach a broader audience throughout the state of South Dakota. But also by using that Museum from Home hashtag, we were seeing visitors from really all around the world for these important ways of sharing our collection, but also things going on in the store. And of course, the very important sharing of our work from home coworkers, the pets that were helping us make each day even more enjoyable. And what that meant then over the course of the 5 months that we were closed is that we really doubled down on social media and web content because I personally wasn't having to spend so much time promoting new exhibitions and new events. And I also was able to learn a ton about how to make the most of the website that we have access to and to use it in a way to get more and more very informative content out to our visitors. So when we did reopen, August 17th, we had just missed celebrating in person our 50th anniversary, which was May 31st. But we reopened to a museum full of permanent collection exhibitions celebrating that 50 years. And Taylor's going to tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of those exhibits we had been planning was 50 Works for 50 Years, which included 50 works from the collection, one acquisition from each year of the museum's history. So our exhibits curator had laid out the show in chronological order. So in that upper right photo, you see the text panel for the show on the right where you enter the gallery. And then the work next to it is an acquisition from 1970. Next to that is 71 and 72 and so on. And really having shared more collections content through that Art Day challenge throughout our closure and knowing that we would maybe be closed again in the fall, which luckily never happened, we decided to share the 50 Works exhibit online, which kind of led into a larger project that went from really that August to March while that was open. So in this slide, you see how Carolyne was able to translate the exhibit to a digital version. So we really wanted to replicate the experience one would have in the gallery, whether you didn't feel safe coming to visit us in person at the time or you were somewhere else. So with the limitations of our website, Carolyne devised this really great layout that worked well. On the left is the exhibit homepage with a view of the gallery, the exhibit text panel, text, and links to decade pages. An online visitor could select any decade and be brought to a page that looks like the image on the right. So Carolyne created object cards for each of the 50 works that could be clicked, allowing the visitor to learn more information about each work. So we wanted to show you one example of an object that we developed this content for and that Carolyne got on the website. So the one we selected is this Oscar Howe painting. And The individual object page gives a bio of the artist, information about the artist, and related archival images, because a big goal of this exhibit was to celebrate these 50 works, but also to celebrate our museum history and the people connected to it. So Carolyne had really devised a schedule for the project where we would share 1 to 2 objects per week on the website, and she would share them via social media. So my role for this piece, and specifically, I secured the copyright permissions from the artist's estate, and here we really recycled an artist bio. We were working with what we had, and secured those archival images. So this process really largely relied on what we already had developed, and we were just sharing it online, making it more accessible. And Carolyne can really speak more to how she set up the web pages.
Yeah, within the Drupal environment that SDSU uses, I have some variety of page layout choices and configurations. But what I learned quickly as I did more and more of these is that I came up with probably 6 or 7 layout styles that worked best depending on the orientation of the artwork that we were featuring and the other content that we had available. And so once I had developed those really just as I went, that the clone tool that was actually introduced kind of mid-pandemic became my best friend, because I could clone a page that looked like it might work, and then we could work for the new content. But up front, one of the things that really paid dividends was developing a URL structure that ended up being very clean and replicatable as it ultimately became these 50 different pages, which had links and URL need to copy paste on many other pages within the website. We really took advantage of this to link to other content that was already out on our website, or to external content that was useful. And as we've said before, that it also then was able to support lots of social media posts. So for example, with the Oscar Howe piece, we could not only share the beautiful image, but these wonderful historic photos, which I would love to know what colors those women's dresses are. And even, I'm sure Oscar Howe there standing tall above them had a beautifully color coordinated outfit on. But, again, this was it was a joy as a staff to learn ourselves more about our history through this work, and then to share that out. And with many people still in the state who had connections of one sort or another to the artworks or the artists or the donors who had given these pieces, it was fun through social media to get some interaction with them and even learn new stories we weren't aware of.
Yeah, there's been a lot of dividends after going through this project. It was a lot of fun, and I know it's energized me to want to make the collection even more accessible, and I look forward to the rest of this programming, see what I can learn, because we'd love to get the collection online in a broader form. And like Carolyne said, we made so many connections during this process with artists and donors, and just lots of fun experiences that this project brought about. And it's all about accessibility. So,
yeah, and for me, it's all about connecting. It helped us connect to our core constituents of our regular visitors and the donors that have supported us so generously over the years. But it also broadened the outreach that we have to new constituents. And we learned to maximize the website that we have access to. And despite its limitations, I think it's not all that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was funny when we were doing planning for this programming, they asked what resources we used, and we're really going to echo, I think, what Anne said, and use what you have, and start from where you are. So these additional resources are largely what we had through our university system, Box and Drupal, and we used what we had on hand, and we were working from home for most of that time. So.
Yeah, and Taylor made that schedule sound very complex. It's literally a 2-column Excel spreadsheet that we plug dates into. So. And all of that was from our homes for the 5 months, and even after we reopened, we were on a rotating schedule where I didn't see Taylor for quite a long time physically. So.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, our key takeaways, I think, echo Anne's very much. So.
Yeah. And definitely jump in, have fun, and don't lose heart. Feel free to contact us.
Definitely.
We'd love to have you following us on social media. Go visit our website, and I'm always open to feedback about how we can improve that, again, within the limitations that we have. But we really appreciate this time and look forward to answering some questions, and hats off to the Museum Learning Hub folks who are amazing.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right, so it is time for some questions. So just as a reminder, please place your questions in the chat area. And if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you are able to post your questions in the comments there as well. We do have people in there capturing them. Our student technology fellows will capture those for us and pass them along to us. So great presentation, everybody. I think we can all say that resourcefulness was a key takeaway from this as well.
Yes.
And you provided some great tips for how to do digitization on a budget. And Carolyne and Taylor, you reminded us that not only does collections digitization affect the fact of getting our stuff into virtual spaces, but it can be a tool for us in times like the pandemic to engage with our members. So thank you all for your time and dedication on these presentations. So to get started with our questions, this is kind of a big one, and I'll leave it open to any of you that would like to respond. If a digitization effort is limited, what should be prioritized first? So where should people start in a digitization project?
I think for me, there's kind of two ways you could approach it. Either what gets used the most so that you have a digital version of it so it doesn't get accessed and damaged maybe as much, or things you have no information about, because then at least you'll have some information about them. But I can see the benefits both. I don't know. What do you guys think, Taylor?
I'm kind of working through that question right now with thinking about getting the collection accessible. And I've kind of settled on, so our Harvey Dunn collection is one of our cornerstone collections and probably the one that we get the most questions about. So I'd really like to get that online just to make it more accessible and start there anyway.
You get lots of Mark Avalinen questions
and
too.
Mark Avalinen, that's true. Yep. So start with both of those.
So this is a question for all of you as well. How do you get buy-in from stakeholders such as board members and community members? And what are the best ways to educate them on what this process looks like, and how do you involve them? Or do you involve them?
Well, for photography, it was something that I kind of noticed, and I just brought up with my supervisor that I thought it'd be an easy thing that wouldn't take up too much of my time with all the other stuff I was working on. I also completely forgot to land the plane in my presentation by saying the collection is, the art and object side is now fully online, and there are about 500 more objects that were photographed because of it. Sorry, those are like the hard numbers I should have said. But yeah, I think accessibility was so big in all forms, like having, bringing the collection out into communities, and working with education programs and things like that. So the boards has a pretty big buy-in, I think, for accessibility. So anything that has that name or makes things easier for people to get to the collection, I was really fortunate that it wasn't that hard of a sell. But with the infrastructure, again, like I was so impressed with all of you at the South Dakota Art Museum, like just being able to change your website so frequently. I would have loved that. Like if you don't have the website infrastructure in place or something, that is a big cost sometimes.
Yeah. I think numbers speak volumes too. Google Analytics. Carolyne might know this. How many visitors to our website we've had in the past year, and compared to last March. It would be interesting to present that to our board and show the results of this work, and how much broader the reach is.
Yeah, ironically, the Oscar Howe page that Taylor showed initially, that's just nothing,
Bare bones,
is one of the highest hit pages on our website, just because apparently it has earned its stripes in Google Analytics. And so a nice thing about this project is now, at least when people land on that, they're directed to a lot more content on our website rather than just landing on this boring page that they probably exit pretty quickly.
Great. And this question might be more suited for the South Dakota Art Museum folks, but Anne, feel free to jump in here too. One of the questions we got is related to making your collection searchable to scholars, and I'm wondering if anytime in your efforts, if that's been addressed as how students or scholars or academics might access your work. Have they done it at your institution? What are some of the benefits of that, and are you aware of any tools that might be available for folks to use or try to get their collections available to those scholars?
Sure. So accessibility to the collection has been largely on site right now for us, but we're looking for a database that will fit well. We use Past Perfect to manage the collection here on site, and they have an online function now, add-on now, that I think would be a good fit for us and our specific collection, the size of it. But we also partner a lot with the SDSU archives, and they have, it's called the Digital Library of South Dakota, which is it's really more archives based. But we have archives here as well, and I'd like to see more of our archival material uploaded to that. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Anne, I have two questions for you. So the first one is, somebody wants to know what TMS is. Can you tell us what TMS is?
Yes, I'm so sorry. It's the museum system. It's a collections management system. I apologize. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. And then we have another question that I'll direct to you, Anne, but feel free to jump in as well, Taylor or Carolyne. Person says, I helped with a project at a previous internship where I photographed 2D art, like paintings and objects. Some of them were in glass frames, and I was told not to take them out of the glass to photograph, but it made it extremely difficult to take photos without any glare. So what tips would you have, or is that just the answer, to take them out of the glass?
No, I completely sympathize, because it's really tough to photograph paintings or prints that have glazing, and generally I don't think you want to take them out. Yeah, you could try and control the light, or I've included a bunch of resources that I hope will go out to all of you, but there's some in there about, I would use foam core often to try and block the reflections as best I could, because the white is reflective at least. But yeah, it's really tricky. You just have to be aware of where you are, where the camera is, and you could probably try the poster board trick. That might work. I haven't tried it with two-dimensional glazed works, but it probably would work if you had something big enough. But yeah, I'm sorry, that is a tricky one. you were right to be frustrated with it.
I'm going to use that poster board trick on a couple pieces we have in the collection. See if it works for me. That are glazed with plexi. So.
And this is a question that I'm sure many of us have out there. Is there a specific type of affordable portable photo or document scanner that any of you would recommend?
We basically use a bed scanner here. Aside from that, I don't have much on site.
Yeah, I've used the Epson scanners, but they, I think, run about $3,000. They're really good and they're workhorses. So if you could maybe write a small grant to get one, it's definitely worth it. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that one.
Well, and as a follow-up to that, I know that many of us have found out that our phones can do some really amazing things in terms of taking pictures and scanning. Are there any apps or anything on your phone that's either free or low cost that you've used that have been very effective in managing these projects?
Yeah, I've definitely looked into how to make like a book scanner with your phone and like a point and shoot. There's a bunch of tutorials online to do that with like cardboard boxes and stuff. I use Snapseed on my Android phone. It's a good editing tool, and Adobe Bridge is free. And that's really good for editing photographs as well. That's not so much the taking of them, but for cropping and stuff like that, it's pretty good.
What about you, Taylor? Have you found any apps or even software that you've found really useful?
Well, to be honest, I'm taking notes as Anna's.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's what we're here. We're learning.
Yeah. Outside of that, no, I use a lot of Photoshop here. I can't say I use too much on my phone for work things.
Yeah, I think for Android phones too, I mean, this is way too detailed, but you can like get to a mode where you can like change the ISO and stuff like that if you want to get real into it. I don't have an iPhone, so I'm not as familiar with those, but Snapseed's good for Androids.
And another person has asked, how would you go about starting to digitize with limited staff? Who does what, essentially? Perhaps this is a good question for the both of you to answer. Sure.
I have a great volunteer guild that's helped somewhat with that in past. Identify, I'm trying to think of projects they've done for digitization. They've helped with data in the past, so identifying keywords to input into Past Perfect, and done some data entry for us. Volunteers are always great if you have a small staff.
And you've also used interns, summer interns to help.
Yep. Divide and conquer, I think.
Any other advice there, Anne, on getting started with this with a limited staff?
No, I guess just being very clear about what everyone should be doing, so that nothing kind of falls through the cracks. But yeah, I was really fortunate at Anchorage. There was a bigger staff than I was used to working with, so many hands made light work.
Yeah.
Very good. And we'll try to get through two more questions before we're out of time here. So one is there a good resource that's out there for digitization standards, things like file size and type that you've come across?
Yeah, the federal FADGI, I can't remember what all the words stand for, but it's the federal guidelines, and it's really long and it's really confusing, but they have handy charts, and it'll be like, this is what you should be doing. And it's like, but if you can't do any of that, here's maybe the bare minimum of what you can be doing. And that sliding chart really helped me out with standards, because sometimes you don't have digital space to save all the raw files. So you know what? Save a TIFF and have a working JPEG, and you're going to be okay. Yeah. So yeah, I use that chart all the time.
Yeah, that's what I work from too.
That's great. And for our viewers, one more time, what was that acronym?
Oh, FADGI, Federal something something guideline something.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, last question before we do some closing remarks. What do you wish you would have known before you jumped into a project like this?
Well, we'll admit that we thought our project was going to be shorter. We thought we would end a lot earlier, and a lot of other projects got started, and we finished sharing the 50 works, I think, the week that the show closed. But we made it. So,
I don't know if I would wish this, but we really ended up having so much fun in spite of all that was going on around us. So I'm super thankful for that. And yeah, really reflecting on it this week as we put this program together, feel really honored that we had that opportunity, and I'm proud of what we did. And it was fun.
I learned that as much as I plan and do all the research I do, once I start doing it, things are going to change. And that's okay. It's okay to be flexible and be like, oh, you know, this is what I said, but actually it's better to do it this way. So that's okay. But yeah, you guys should be totally impressed. Like, it's so impressive, all the work you did with all those objects and getting that exhibit off the ground. It's amazing.
Well, I feel like your key takeaways in both of your presentations, you know, trial and error is going to happen. And one that really stuck to me was take heart at the end of your presentation, Carolyne and Taylor. And I think that's important as we go into these projects. And I think that's a great note to end on for our introductory and inspiration session. So once again, thank you to all of you for your time and your efforts, and for pivoting in a pandemic and doing things on a budget. So great work, and we look forward to seeing more from your institutions. Okay, thank you all for attending today's program, the introductory and inspiration session for managing digitization projects. Thank you to our presenters, and Carolyne and Taylor. As we mentioned prior, there will be a satisfaction survey that will be sent out. So please make sure to give us some feedback and let us know how we're doing. It'll take you just a few minutes to complete. After each module, all 4 videos will be available on our website, as well as a complete toolkit of resources provided by our presenters. If you would like our pre-broadcast toolkit, those are only sent out to those that register through Eventbrite. So if you're looking forward to the next presentation, we recommend you go to that attend page and register and sign up. That will take you through to Eventbrite to complete that process. So sign up for next week's webinar, and the toolkit will be provided to you ahead of time. And again, if you need to watch any of our previous videos, those can be found on our Watch Live, or on our past webinars page, rather, on our website. So some final housekeeping notes. Please remember to visit the forum on our website to ask any questions you might have between presentations. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay aware of future programs. Links will be once again provided in the chat for those. As I mentioned, please complete our post-event satisfaction survey. And lastly, be sure to join us next week on Tuesday, June 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time for technical workshop number 1 of the Managing Digitization Projects module. This will cover strategy and purpose, and our presenter will be Dr. Rhonda D. Jones of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Thank you all for joining us. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.